Susan, when you went up for this role, Kathy, in The Other Side of Midnight, you surely knew that they were reading lots of women for the role, did you?
For anything you go up for, they're always reading tons of people. That's just the way it is, yeah.
Well, how did you get yourself up for it? Did you just say, oh, well, another part, or were you really tense and wanting it desperately?
No, I said, oh, well, here's another part, and managed to go in and get in a huge fight with the producer and director and thought that I had blown the whole thing. And
now,
then,
wait a minute. You got in a fight with the producer? And
no, I guess that's a little excessive. It wasn't really a fight. I just told him a film that he had done, which I hadn't known he had done, was incredibly boring and terrible.
Which film was that?
The Great Gatsby. And then he told me that it was his film, and I said, well, I still thought it was awfully boring, and you made a lot of mistakes. And that was the end of my interview. And I left, and he claims that when I left, that he turned to Charles and said, that's Kathy. But I don't know if that's true. I think Frank has a pretty good sense of humor.
Were you accustomed to doing that, you know, when you go in? I mean, how did you get into that conversation?
Because I had done a special called F. Scott Fitzgerald and the Last of the Bells, in which I played Zelda. And Charles had seen it, and he liked it, and we started discussing the technique of getting into that. And I commented on the fact that Fitzgerald is written with an accent, and things like I didn't see how it could have been done without one. And then Frank jumped in and said, oh, really? Well, what do you know, and kept kind of getting more information, and I told him what I thought, and then he said, well, I did that, you know, that was my film. And I said, I mean, I had no way of knowing that. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but, you know, I still think it was pretty boring. And he was pretty good about it, I guess, in the long run. I mean, I love him very much. He knows that he gets a little worried because I am a little straightforward, but I'm just a really rotten liar, so if someone has the misfortune of asking me a question, then I'm afraid they have to be ready to take the answer.
Susan, in this picture, you have so many what I would call physical scenes. That scene in the cave, the scene in the boat, and the raging storm, and so forth. Now, do you find scenes like that are more difficult to execute, or does the action just kind of carry the scene for you?
Well, no, they're very uncomfortable and they're very difficult, and it's very hard to stay in character. But I think that probably a graphic love scene would be much, much harder for me. I think that a lot of what Marie-France had to do was probably just as devastating. You know, it takes a lot of concentration as an actress to do anything that's that demanding.
Are you saying then you're referring to the nude scenes and the sex scenes?
Because you're you know what you're fighting when you're fighting waves in a boat that's going to hit you in the head or walking on a wing. But when you're trying to pretend that you have an intimate relationship with someone and you're as vulnerable as you are when you're totally naked in front of a bunch of strangers that you don't feel anything intimate for, it's a much harder struggle.
Now, you've never had to do a nude scene?
Oh, yeah. My first film, I jumped in a tub naked, obviously, within the first 3 minutes of the film when I did Joe. I haven't done any real graphic, hot love scenes. I've taken off my clothes in a number of films where it was quite necessary. And I liked the seduction scene in this one because I felt it was very bumbling and kind of funny, and I liked the idea of someone talking the whole time they're being seduced. But it's always difficult. The film I just finished, I have to sit around with my clothes off while he's photographing me because he's a man who photographs whores in Pretty Baby, Louis Malle's film, and I found that just as difficult as the first time I took off my clothes. But that's why you're an actress, isn't it? You have to pretend a lot.
Do you wish you were an actress back an earlier time when they didn't have to do that?
No, not necessarily, because there are a lot of advantages now. You know, I'm glad I am where I am now. I wouldn't, change it for anything. I've seen a lot of very heavy changes occur during this period, and I like being there when something's happening.
Susan, it's nice having this chance to talk with you.
Thank you.
And this is Bobbie Wygant at 20th Century Fox Studios in Hollywood.